Hey, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I'm gonna just wait a few minutes till a few of you get in, and just know that on this video we will upload it to our YouTube channel. So if you do happen to miss this live recording event, you can always go back and look at it on our YouTube channel, or you can come back and look at it on our page. I'm Trenda Hackett, your Web CPA with the Web CPA Virtual Tax Clinic. And I just wanted to come back and jump back on here again because I am very serious about keeping you in the know to make sure that, especially if you are a business or with employees or without employees, or if you're a self-employed individual, that you will qualify to get some of the funding under the SBA programs due to COVID-19. This is a follow-up to a video that I did last week. If you can go back up my feed, you can check that video. And here again, like I said, you can also go over to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the Web CPA Virtual Tax Clinic if you missed that video. And I like to always say, when you're coming on these videos, they're very informational. They have detailed information. It's really good if you have the time to sit down and look at them and get your notepad and get you something to write with so you can jot the notes down even while we're doing the live video, or even if you go back and watch it later. So what I'm coming on today is I wanted to just kind of answer some questions. A lot of you have been reaching out to the clinic and asking about the funding. I know it's confusing. It's confusing to the people that are trying to implement the program. I guess we all have to realize to have a little patience as we all try to navigate this new season that we're in. And so as much as I can, I want to come on here and give you any information that will help answer your questions, and particularly to not let you miss an opportunity to get on this funding, especially if it applies to your business. So we're going to start today. And so the questions in the previous video, I talked about 4 different programs, and I'm going to just call those programs out. I won't go into details in them, but it was the EIDL program. It's the emergency injury disaster loan, economic injury. I can't even talk this evening. Economic injury disaster loan. It's the EIDL program. And the gist of that program, if you are a business, whether you have employees or not, you can be a single owner business with no employees, an entrepreneur. You can be a landlord. You can apply for that funding under the EIDL program. And the EIDL program, you can get a maximum of $2 million. You could qualify for that. But the really cool part about that, you can get a $10,000 loan advance, and that's in the form of a grant that does not have to be paid back. And that money comes directly from the SBA. You go to the SBA's website and you can apply for the funding there. And I also talked about the PPP program. It's the Paycheck Protection Program, and that too is for businesses, with or without employees, for nonprofits, for renters, landlords, for self-employed individuals, independent contractors. And with that program, you can qualify. You could possibly qualify for a maximum up to 10 million. But how that works is it's the lesser of a certain percentage of your payroll costs, or the 10 million. And so we're gonna dive a little bit into that this evening. And then of course you have the other 2 programs that I mentioned. It's the SBA Express Bridge Loan Program. So go back and check the video. That's a program where you can get up to $25,000 while you're waiting on a decision from the EIDL programs and the PPP programs that you may have applied for. So if you just have a little cash crunch in between that time of waiting on that decision, that funding is available to you as a small business owner, whether or not you have employees or not, or a nonprofit as well. And then I talked about the SBA debt relief program. Those are some programs that they have in place for those of you that may have already had SBA loans outstanding when COVID came. And what they're doing, they're paying some of the principal and the interest for 6 months on those existing loans. And any new loans, what they're doing is any new loans that you get prior to September 27th, 2020, they're paying the interest and the principal on those as well. But tonight I wanted to just answer some questions. I've made some notes here. And so you may have heard about all of these programs. And now you may be sitting there wondering, does this apply to me? Can I apply? So I'm going to pose the question. I'm going to answer this question from the standpoint of who should apply. And when I'm saying who should apply, I'm talking about both the EIDL program and the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. And remember, the EIDL program, you're supposed to apply for that with the SBA, but the Paycheck Protection Program, this is where you go to your bank or an SBA approved lender under the program. And if you want to know to find an approved lender, you can go to the SBA website. And if you could just type in Paycheck Protection Program, or you can go back up my feed. I have a link where I gave it to you directly to find a lender. So let's answer the question, who should apply? Who should apply? If you are a business, now what does that mean? That means that you're in the business of providing a product or a service in exchange for money. Or it can be in exchange for something non-monetary. But you're in the business of providing a product or a service. Now, so who should apply? If you have a business and you're in the business of providing a product or a service and you have under 500 employees. So these are for like your bigger companies. So when I say business, it doesn't say, this business, anything that qualifies as a business. For example, you may be a baker, you may be a realtor, you may be an insurance broker or agent, you may be a life coach, a health coach, you could be a consulting business. That's still a business. So you can be a truck driver, you can be you can have an auto repair business, you can be a hair salon owner and cosmetologist, you can do massages. It's so many things that makes a business because you're providing that service. So if you're a business, you don't have more than 500 employees, guess what? You can apply. Guess what? If you are what they call a sole proprietorship or an independent contractor, you can apply. So a lot of you probably get stuck on the application. Well, I don't know if I'm a business with under 500 employees, or do I check the box that says sole proprietorship or independent contractor? So let me just kind of distinguish that for you. So you're going to see some terminology, especially for those of you that have a business where you are a single owner and you don't have employees. This provision was set so that a person that owns their own business and they actually do the work. It's like they're the employee of their own business. They don't have other employees to do the work. It was written so that you can get benefit as well, because due to the COVID, if you are let's say that you are a cosmetologist, you may not be able to do as much hair as you had been doing before. So you've been impacted. So guess what? You can apply under both of these programs. And that's another question I get. Can we just apply for one? No, I'm telling you to apply for both. If you are a business and you provide a service, if you are a business, you don't even have to have what they call a tax ID number, EIN number. If you are a business, most of the time, if you are a single owner business, the only time you need an EIN, that's a tax ID number where you go online and you fill out the paperwork with the IRS and say, hey, give me a number outside of my social security number. The only time you need what's called an EIN, an employer identification number, is when if you want to open a bank account and in the name of your business rather than your own name, or if you have employees that you're paying. Some of you do not have an EIN number. Guess what? You're not required to. If you are a single owner business, you don't have any employees, and you do business in just your name, you don't have to have an EIN number, but that still doesn't mean that you're not a business and that you can't qualify. So that's what I'm saying. If you are a business, you provide a service, you can qualify, you can apply under both of these programs, the EIDL and the PPP program. And so it's for small businesses. What makes a business small? If you have less than 500 employees. Also, if you are a nonprofit organization, the only stipulation is that you cannot be a governmental agency. So what the rule says, that if you're a nonprofit organization, you can apply. So what do we mean by a nonprofit organization? There are different variations. Let's say you are a nonprofit and you have filed nonprofit incorporation papers with the state that you do your nonprofit in. Let's say you have filed papers with the state. Then you went a step farther and you got your 501c3 with the IRS. Guess what? You're considered that private nonprofit. Okay, so that was pretty simple. Okay, let's do another variation. You may be a nonprofit organization, and the only thing that you've done is you filed the articles of incorporation to be a nonprofit with the state that you're nonprofit in, but you hadn't quite got around to doing the 501c3. And you may ask, can I still apply? Can I still apply? Guess what? There's a provision in there that says, and I'm gonna read it off to you. If you are a nonprofit that has not gotten the 501c3 with the IRS, if you can get satisfactory evidence from the state that your organization is a nonprofit and you're doing business under state law, then you can apply. What does that mean? If you are a nonprofit, you have filed paperwork with the state for your nonprofit and you haven't did the 501c3 with the IRS, guess what? You can apply because you have filed articles of incorporation with the state. Now, there are some nonprofits out there. They say, you know what? We're a nonprofit. I haven't filed paperwork with the state, and I have not filed the paperwork with the IRS to be a 501c3. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. There are some states. Now, there are 50 states, and I don't know which all states recognize this, but I do know the state of Texas does because that's the state where I live in. Also, so you have to check with your state. But there are some states that has what's called an unincorporated nonprofit organization or association. So what does that mean? That is a company, let's say an individual or a group of individuals that have come together and said, you know what, we're going to provide a nonprofit service. We're going to have a nonprofit organization, but we haven't had a chance to get our incorporations or the 501c3 with the IRS yet. Here again, that's a little tricky because if you haven't filed the information or your paperwork with the state, and if there are more than one of you all, your nonprofit may actually be a partnership. Or if it's just one of you, your nonprofit may actually be a sole proprietorship. So it gets real tricky when you consider your business or your organization a nonprofit and you have not filed the paperwork with the state and you have not filed paperwork with the IRS. So Hopefully there's not a lot of you that have not done that, but I wanted to just clear this up. And mainly I want to talk to the self-employed individuals that don't have employees. These are your personal service companies, like your truck drivers, like your consultant, like your coaches. These are, like I said before, if you have a business, you're providing a service and you're getting paid for it, and you're the only one doing the work, you can apply for these programs. Now, another question that I've gotten is, can I apply for more than one program? I just told you that yes, you can. By now, if you watch my initial video, I would hope that you will have already applied for the EIDL program. The EIDL program. So that program, it doesn't have all these stipulations with, being lesser than the lesser of your payroll costs or $10 million. No. It doesn't have that stipulation. Now, you do have to use the money. There are certain things, expenses you have to use the money for. And because the government is trying to get money in your hands so quick, they have removed some of the constraints and the paperwork. So what they're doing, if you notice, these applications are real short. But you have to understand that when you're filling out that application, you are certifying to certain things that if they go back and check later, they may check it later. So you got to make sure that you know what those boxes you checking or what you're signing, that you're certifying that the information that you gave is accurate. You're certifying, because they may not have time to verify your information that you may have pulled from your tax return with the IRS. There's a box on there to say that you're certifying that this information that you put on this application is the information that I should find on the IRS records. A lot of banks are asking for your 2019 tax return, and sometimes you may not have that. If you need a tax return prepared, it's what we do here in the Web CPA Virtual Tax Clinic. But I do think there are ways around, like if you don't have your tax return, let's say if you don't have your tax return, but you have your Form 1099. If you are a real estate agent or insurance broker, you may not have filed your tax return, but you have your Form 1099, because that's who's considered an independent contractor. So you may see the term an independent contractor and you may be like, what is the difference? An independent contractor is one that primarily all of their income comes from a 1099. So if you are a realtor or an insurance agent or broker, all of your income comes from that 1099. So here again, it's real tricky, but ask questions and pay attention to what your bankers are asking you for. If you're not sure, you can visit our website at www.virtualtaxclinic.com. You can put your question that you have in the question box, and we will get back to you with an answer to your question. If we can't understand your question, we will send you a link to schedule an appointment with the clinic so that we can sit down and talk more about this. Okay, so now let's talk about, you're going to see this term payroll costs. Payroll costs. You're going to see that term under both programs, because that's how they're determining the amount of money that you qualify for. Payroll costs, your mortgage interest expense, rent that you have to pay, or utilities that you have to pay. Now, under the PPP program, write that down, PPP program, the maximum amount of loan that you can get, here's what the rule says. It's the lesser of 2.5 times your average payroll costs, or $10 million. So let's say, I'm going to start with the straightforward example right now. So let's say if you say, okay, I don't have payroll costs. If your payroll costs are zero, guess what your loan amount will be under the PPP program? It will be zero, because it's the lesser of, And 2.5 times 0 is 0, right? And you take the lesser number, 0 versus 10 million, the lesser number is 0. So, but where a lot of you may be confused is you're thinking payroll costs means that I have to have paid some employees. No, that is not exactly what they're saying. It doesn't matter whether you have employees or you don't have employees. If you're a self-employed individual and you do this business all by yourself, you still have what's called payroll costs. So pretty much straightforward. For a business that has employees, payroll costs includes W-2s that you paid to who? To your employees. It includes your share. If you paid a retirement plan for your employees, that part that you paid. If you pay health benefits for your employee, that part that you paid for your employees. Now, that's pretty straightforward with a business or a sole proprietorship that has employees. Let's talk about the self-employed individual or the independent contractor or the sole proprietorship that does not have employees. It's the owner that does all the work. And normally in a sole proprietorship or with an independent contractor, you don't give yourself a W-2. You don't have to pay tax. You don't have to file payroll tax returns, because guess what? What you make in the business is what you get to spend. So you don't have to do W-2 wages and all of that if you are a sole proprietorship and you are a single owner. The owners does not have to file a W-2 for what they pay themselves. However, so the question is, what are they looking for the average payroll cost for a self-employed individual or a business that does not have employees? So what they're saying is that the owner is considered like an employee. So therefore, average payroll costs are going to include the 1099s that the owner of that business got, all the 1099s that you received for the services that you provided. So let's say if you are that realtor or that insurance agent, you got 1099s for the services that you provided. That's going to be your average payroll cost. Let's say you are a personal service care business, like a auto repair shop, a consultant. You could be a coach. You could be a truck driver, a hairdresser, a barber shop. Oh, it's just so many different personal service. You could be a baker. So what are the average costs for someone that is in a personal service business where they provide the service, they don't have the employees? That would be the amount of your income. So when you do your tax return, you got to know how much income came in. You have to know how much expenses came in. So a lot of the bankers that are working with the PPP program, they may ask for your tax return, or they may ask for your current financials. So the rule says that they want to know your average payroll costs for the last 12 months. So some banks are saying, give me your 2019 information and we'll just use that and divide it by 12. And that'll be your average payroll cost. And we'll multiply that by the 2.5 and that will be your loan amount. But then we have months that have taken place in this year. So the program, you couldn't start applying for the program until April the 3rd. So we at least in 1 quarter of this year. So you could take, and it says go back 12 months. So you could take the first quarter of this year and then 3 quarters in 2019. That's 12 months. And you can total that amount. But the bottom line is you have to have had income, something coming in to qualify, or to, I won't say qualify, you to have a loan amount that you can apply for under the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. But now, let's say you don't have payroll costs under the so that you can have a loan amount that you can apply for under the PPP program. The EIDL stipulation is not that. Although you have to use the monies to pay payroll costs, mortgage, rent, and utilities, there's not a stipulation under there for average payroll costs for the EIDL program. So they made it to where you can either do both. If you don't qualify, if you have a zero loan amount under the PPP, you can do the EIDL. And what my recommendation is, by now, hopefully you all have applied, if you are a business, for the EIDL program through the SBA, through their very simple online application. Now, so let's say you qualify under the PPP program. Let's say they calculate it and you can get $20,000 under the PPP program. Now, here's the thing with the PPP program. That loan can be forgiven. You may not have to pay that back if you strategize right. So they're saying there's a clause that says if you get monies under the PPP program. So let's say, for example purpose, you qualified to get $20,000 under the PPP program. Hey, that bank has put that check in your account. Now, so when you apply, you're saying that I'm going to use this money for payroll costs, for rent, for mortgage interest, and utilities. So in order to not have to pay that $20,000 back, if within 8 weeks after the date that loan closed, so let's say you got $20,000 and let's say your loan closes, the loan origination date may be, let's say if it's May 1st. So you will count in 8 weeks after May 1st. If you took that $20,000 and you paid payroll costs, mortgage, interest, utilities, and rent for your business now, the business portion of it, then you can apply to say, hey, after the 8 weeks, I want this loan forgiven. I want to have this loan forgiven. Now, here's what I want y'all to really listen to me carefully. Payroll costs for a self-employed individual with no employees. Guess what? If you pay yourself, what is that? That's your payroll cost, right? So let's say, with our example, $20,000. And then there's another little stipulation in there that says that you have to take this $20,000 that you got under the PPP program, right? At least 75% of it has to go to payroll, because the whole point of the program is to keep people working, So in the case of a self-employed individual with no employees, you got $20,000. If you take 75% of that and you pay payroll costs, which let's say you pay yourself, and then you take the remainder, you pay mortgage interest, you pay rent, or you pay utilities. And if you use all of that on those four things, at least 75% must have been on payroll costs, and payroll costs include what you pay to yourself. Then that $20,000, if you do what you're supposed to do in the 8 weeks after the date of that loan, you can apply and request that $20,000 be forgiven. So if you have any questions, I'm just checking to see if anybody have any questions. If you have any questions, you can put your question in the comment box now, or you can visit our website at www.virtualtaxclinic.com and put your question there. Don't miss out on this opportunity due to the lack of knowledge. So no question is a dumb question. Ask your questions, because 9 times out of 10, if you are a business, you qualify. Now, some of you, this is just something so you can just know. So some of you may be working for companies, and you find that these companies are laying off a lot of employees, let me tell you why. So these big companies, they're trying to meet the small business standards so that they can get the money. And then if they get enough money, they can go back after the loan is done and rehire these people back. That was the whole purpose of the program, the PPP program. So in order to be a small business and qualify under this PPP program, a business have to have less than 500 employees. Less than 500 employees. So you may see a lot of these companies that are laying people off, and there's a reason for it, because it's almost like you're being forced to lay people off right now, and then you're going to hire them back. However, if you know anybody that's been laid off, make sure that they're applying for their unemployment, because guess what? There's some COVID funding under the unemployment program. But tonight I'm just talking about the Small Business Administration programs. So I know I shared a lot with you. Go back and play this video and take your time and sift through the information. Don't keep this to yourself. Share it with somebody. It is my hope that I have cleared up who can apply. It is my hope that I have erased any question from your mind whether or not you can apply. I had a question come in to say, if we have, I have 2 separate businesses and 2 different EIN numbers. Those are 2 separate businesses. Those are 2 separate businesses. Apply for both. Apply for both. And just keep in mind, you want to be prepared to have the information that they're requesting when they get to processing your application. A lot of them are requesting tax returns, and namely the 2019. They may want financials, like your current financials for 2020, which means we want to know what you brought in, what you've been paying out from January of this year until the end of the first quarter of this year, until the end of March. So that's what you can do, is your due diligence. So if you sit down and you really have a conversation, you ask the right question, y'all, you can at least be qualified for $10,000 in advance that you don't have to pay back. And you can also qualify under another program for money that you don't have to pay back if you do what you're supposed to do with it within 8 weeks after you get it. Okay, so I have a question here. I work a full-time job and I have a side business as a consultant with a 1099. Would I qualify? Of course you would. Of course you would. Of course you would. Your 1099 as a consultant, that is totally separate from what you do as your job. So my recommendation to you is today, go and apply for the EIDL program. EIDL program through the Small Business Administration. If you go to the SBA.gov, you'll see that. Or if you go back up my feed, I've given you those links. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions or something you need clarification on? You may not have your question right now. Let me make sure I got everybody. Okay. All right. I don't see any more questions. If you don't have any questions now, if you think about some questions later, please, please, please feel free to reach out. And one last thing I'll talk about too. I'm glad somebody asked a question about a daycare, because that I meant to put that in one of my examples. Okay, I have a daycare and I just got my license in March. I have been paying rent and utilities since August, as well as got the EIN number. So you got your business license in March. When did you start the business? When did you actually start the business? And you said you have been paying rent and utilities since August. So let's just say, for example purposes, let's say that you have started the business in March when you got your license. You can apply, but now, so what's going to happen is you can probably apply under the EIDL because you may not have enough payroll costs from March up until April, because you just started your business in March. So for the PPP program, you may not have enough payroll or at least enough payroll costs, because with the PPP program, it's based on your average payroll cost. So you can take 2.5 times your average payroll cost. So you would calculate your payroll costs for the month of March. I put it like that. I don't know what day in March you started, but you will only be able to count your payroll costs for the month of March because you just started your business in March. So the question would be is, when did you start your business? I filed an application for the EIDL $10,000 grant, and I received an application number, and it has been longer than 3 days. Okay, so here's the thing. So one thing I'm gonna tell you, like I said as I came on, we have to kind of have some patience with our government. I think I heard Bishop T.D. Jakes say this, that, our government, they are good in coming up with legislations for these programs, but they, kind of struggle in actually implementing the program. And so, of course, what you see out on the website and what the information that they're giving, that putting out on public, it says 3 days. I think that was a very aggressive, okay, that's what we like to do, but it's not happening. And what it is, the system is overwhelmed. And just keep in mind, the EIDL grant, it comes directly from the SBA. That's not involved with a bank. So I would recommend that you just hang on, because they'll eventually get back to you. There's not a way that you can check on the status. Now, you may be able to, there's a number on that, the EIDL application. So if you go to the SBA.gov website and you go to that EIDL application, on that first page of that application, if you go down to the bottom, there's a phone number and there's an email. And I have called that phone number. There's a phone number that you can call, and you can just ask them some general information, but you can't give them a loan application number, and they check on the status of it. So you just kind of, if it's been longer than 3 days, just hold out and just wait on, just hang on. Now, here again, so let's say that the person that asked that question, let's say you're in a business, you had a business, and let's just say you're in a financial crunch. You're in a financial crunch in between trying to wait on this decision for this loan. So remember, in my previous video, if you watched that, I talked about the SBA Express Bridge Loan Program. And that's what that program is for. You can get up to $25,000. That's under a total different program. And you would have to go to, that's not directly through the SBA. You have to go to your bank and say, hey, I want to see if I could qualify for an SBA Express Bridge Loan. And that's up to $25,000. You don't have to get the full 25. You may need $5,000. You may need $10,000 to get you over until this decision is made on this grant in your business. Then you can apply for the SBA Express Bridge Loan through your banker. Okay, anyone else? Any other questions? Somebody said I have 3 employees. So for that person that has 3 employees, your average payroll cost will be what you pay to them. What you pay to them from the time that you, I won't say from the time that you started your business, but well, you do need to look at what date you started your business, because I still don't know. I know you got your license in March, so I'm going to make the assumption that that was the day that you were able to actually do business. And so you would do the payroll that you pay for those 3 employees for the month of March. For the month of March. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions? All right. Thank y'all so much for your questions. And I had, let me see. I had another question come in. I wanted to, there was a question that came in. I told you about the separate businesses. So let's just say you are a business that you may have already had a disaster loan outstanding with the SBA for another disaster. And I think the question was, can you still apply? And yes, because this is a different disaster. However, you remember when I talked about the SBA debt relief. So if you already had another SBA loan, whether it's a disaster loan or a 7A loan or what they call a micro loan, they have provisions due to COVID-19 to where they're going to pay your principal and interest on that loan for at least 6 months. For at least 6 months. So if you already got an SBA loan already, this will not prevent you from applying under one of these programs. Keep it separate, y'all. Keep it separate. This is just for COVID. So just wanted to remind you of that. Let me make sure I filed. Okay, so that for I think that's Dion. You asked the question about, you started in March. Calculate your what are your payroll costs in March. I would recommend you, but still, everybody, if you are a business, apply under the EIDL program. And I know some of you, and I forgot to talk about, even, let's just say some of you do Mary Kay. That you're an independent contract, that's a business. Some of you may do Avon. Some of you may do paparazzi. That is a business, even though you don't have an EIN number, because you're doing business in your own personal name. You didn't need one. You're not paying employees. Guess what you use? You use your social security number. Okay? So I try to cover as many types of businesses as I can. But likewise, you may have a question to say, well, I have this type of business. Do I qualify? If you want to send that question or post it in here, you can do that. Or you can send that question to us at www.virtualtaxclinic.com. All right, y'all. I've taken up enough of your time this evening. Thank you so much for joining. Please, 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 please share this video with someone else. And I just want to recap one last time. If you are a business, whether you have employees or not, you should apply. You can qualify. You can apply. If you are a private nonprofit, what do I mean by a private nonprofit? That means that you're not a governmental agency. And I don't think I mentioned that if you are a faith-based organization, if you are a church, you can apply. You don't have to have the 501c3 from the IRS, because churches are automatically exempt from taxes under the 501c3. So I know I've covered a lot. You all have an amazing evening. Not sure when I'll be back, but as I am getting updated information, especially information that I know that will help you, I will come back on as much as I can. But don't wait until I come back on. If you have questions, we monitor our comments and we try to answer your questions. But go to our website, put your question in there. No question is off limits. The main thing, go apply for the EIDL. And now, if you qualify, apply for the PPP program. Now that you're clear on what payroll costs include. All right. Y'all have an amazing evening. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.